Hi everyone and welcome along to Sonic Academy with me, Chris Yelly. In this Sonic feature we've got another exclusive interview for you. This time it's a rising star in the EDM world in America. He is joining us from his studio in Brooklyn and is none other than Pierce Fulton. Pierce, are you there?
Yep, I am. How are you?
I'm not too bad, and yourself?
I'm great.
So Pierce, you have been producing for how long at the moment? What's
I started in 2009, so like 5-ish years.
5-ish years? It's been a very quick rise through the ranks. Has it surprised you?
I mean, I think it's been an interesting little road for me. So starting out, I got a lot of attention in Europe. Actually, I wasn't too known in America at all, and then it completely changed about like 2 or 3 years ago. So now it's the flip side, where it's mostly American listeners and not so much Europe. But
Yeah.
it really flip flops all the time with I guess whatever I'm making at the moment.
Cool. And have you seen the scene change a lot in America in the last sort of 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I've been touring like full on, I'd say for 2 or 3 years. At first I was just producing, and I kind of got into DJing because that was just what went hand in hand. And I've definitely seen it change since the beginning, because I used to play shows and the crowd would just be not into it at all. And then, present day, they could be completely different, which is crazy because, I don't know, it used to be kind of nerve-wracking playing kind of a more flashy club where you thought that you had to play all these kind of vocal hit tracks. And now you don't really have to. It's interesting. I kind of just do my thing and it works.
So tell us a bit about your sound. How would you describe the Pierce Fulton sound? It's listening through your catalogue and body of work. It kind of veers a bit left and a bit right. There's not a particular hardcore sound there.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to describe it in my mind, I guess, is like rhythmic progressive house and kind of strange electro, kind of going back and forth. Sometimes using both in one song, sometimes just going on one side for a song. You know what I mean? I kind of try to blend a little bit of everything in.
And what sort of influences you? What acts? Are you from Vermont? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I was.
How in 2009, 2010, what influenced you in Vermont? What sort of music was it?
Well, I actually, weirdly enough, my first electronic show, I got snuck into an Eric Prydz show in New York.
Okay.
And it was like the first time he'd been over in like a few years, and then he hadn't come back after for like 2 or 3 years. So that was pretty crazy. And I just saw one of his sets, and I think that definitely changed a lot of my perspective, because at the time I think I was even doing like hip hop and stuff and kind of weird experimental production. And I remember seeing Eric play and just completely doing a turnaround, and I think he definitely has had a big influence on my sound, just in terms of the way that I write my melodies, because I do a lot of like, I want to say like long progressions that it's not like a minimalist approach, but it's that kind of rewarding feeling of having a really long progression that will resolve in a cool way, if you know what I mean.
When you say long progression, is it like a long build up in terms of bars, or long progression?
I'm just saying the writing itself. Like he's kind of the king of using like heavy arpeggios with a really cool moving bass line, and it'll just have this really nice. I don't know. It's like a long-term resolution type thing. Instead of a quick chord progression, he kind of holds off and milks that little progression, which I've definitely taken a lot from.
Which brings me to a question about your track "Pardon My French."
Oh yeah.
What that is that the breakthrough single? Was that the breakthrough single for you?
I mean, honestly, I still haven't even seen myself having a breakthrough single yet. I'm still working, I feel like, towards that. But that was definitely a big stepping stone, just because I actually did this funny video where I recorded a burp and put it in the track, and it just became this kind of funny little video that people shared around. And it was just a pretty unique electro track, which was fun. That was a long time ago now, which is weird.
Yeah, and that was all. That was on the CR2 label. Is that correct? That's
Yep.
From that, how do you move on? That I take it you had a single song assignment, and where do you go from there?
Well, I actually signed a deal with CR2 back then, and it was just a multiple track deal, and that was the first EP that kind of launched the little schedule that we had with CR2. And then I think I did a single after, and then an A and B side single after. then the collab with Mauro Levy,
Yeah.
another single. So it kind of depends. I've been pushing for more than one track for my releases just because I like singles because you can market it a lot better. But I like to be able to show exactly what I'm doing at the moment with more than one track because
Okay.
I feel like one track isn't really enough. And some people like 3 or 4 track EPs. I honestly like 2 songs going together because I think that it's kind of like black and white complementing type feel, if you know what I mean.
On that subject, do you feel that the album is still a valid concept these days, or is it should it be 4 really strong songs on an EP, or as you say 2?
Albums for dance music are very interesting because people can execute them really well, and some people just can't. And I think that if you're going to do an album, and
Can I be balls then that most people don't execute them well in dance music, and only a few do?
Yeah,
Is-
yeah.
you know.
I think the biggest problem that people have is they become too self-conscious that they're doing all dance music when a dance music album should be all dance music.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like 4 kind of ambient weird tracks and then like 3 all right ones and 2 hit ones. It's
Yeah.
like it should be, if you're going to do a dance music album, just do it. If not, start a new project and make that completely different. But like, for example, I mean, and I'm just saying from a listening standpoint, like I don't so much play Zed music, but I respected that album a lot just because he went in with the mentality of a dance music album and came out with a big album.
Yeah.
So that's the proper way of doing it, I think, for him. And I don't know, I've just seen so many other artists that try to do it and then kind of want to experiment a bit, and it comes out completely different, and it's tough.
So, talking of Zed, there's a bit of a similarity between your chords and stuff that you use in Zeds. How do you are you a player? Do you sit at a keyboard and play? Do you have like push controller, or how do you come up with chord structure? What's the key?
It's never really the same process. Sometimes I'm sitting at a keyboard, sometimes I'm just like on a plane or whatever, and punching in MIDI notes with my mouse pad. It really depends. I don't really have any traditional way of writing, because I mean I grew up playing music, so I've had a background of theory and just performing, and to be honest, it doesn't really like relate to my production that much. It does, it helps it and it benefits it, but it doesn't, it wasn't necessary, if you know what I mean. I could have gone into this with no knowledge and kind of figured it out, because with electronic music, if you have a good ear, you can figure it out and kind of learn how to write music just through experimenting. And that's what's kind of cool, I think, versus writing music with a guitar, because sometimes I'll write my music just by sitting on my couch with my guitar and something comes out, but it's different.
Is it easy enough to translate those chord structures that you get on the guitar over to the dance? I'm thinking of the track "Who Wants Spaghetti."
Yeah.
I really liked, there was kind of like angular chords in there that I really liked. How did you come up with those chords? Tell me the exact process.
What's cool is, so if I write something with a guitar, it'll usually be just a standard like 4-chord progression where I just have the bass chords. And if I end up going that route, I'll translate it just to my computer by just punching the MIDI notes in, because it's pretty easy. And then I will often just experiment and see what happens. And a big thing I've done actually is I'll have a bass line and maybe some chords that are just completely normal. And then I'll take like 2 channels that are just different sounding leads and use those almost as additional parts in the chord. But like, say I want to put a 7th and I don't want it to just be mixed in with the chord.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it be its own element and stick out in that sense, because it's hard to get like a big pad to have a certain note to stick out without doing like, you can change the velocity and all that. But I just feel like if you're using a completely different sound, it will stick out a lot more. And so I've always done that. And I've actually tried to kind of make that one of my like characteristics in all my music, is having 2 harmonies that always go on with the chords that I have going on in 2 different synths. And it's really nice. It just adds this kind of special feeling to it.
So can I drill down a little bit further? You would have some sort of sawy pad that's doing the main chords.
And that's the main chords, yeah.
And then you would have a secondary synth doing a 7th sort of
Well,
note,
it doesn't
or a
necessarily
5th or some sort of harmony, yeah?
I can literally even show you something right now that I have doing the exact. So like, for example, I've been working on this song and it has like piano chords here. And so that's just standard chords. And then let me find these harmonies. So obviously it wouldn't be as aggressive as this because it's just completely out in the open, but I have these two synths playing on top. So essentially, it's almost like a lead, but they're not as loud as a lead, so that it'll just kind of meld into the back.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's something I kind of did by accident in the past, and I've tried to make that a consistent thing now because I've done it so many times just by chance.
It's the one consistent thing from Meyer, Island Bluestone, and those guys that we're interviewing. It is layering, it's, real selective layering, and that gets you the wall of sound. What do you use? What software are you using at the moment?
I use Logic for all my productions. So.
You don't use Ableton, or?
I use Ableton for my mixes just because it's easy for warping.
Yeah,
and I can use Ableton. I just kind of prefer Logic. It's funny because starting out I used like Reason, and then I did a bit of like FL and Sonar. I just kind of tried everything, and I just stuck with Logic because I thought it was the best looking one, and I thought I could put up with the looks for more than the others.
And have you moved to 10?
No, I'm actually still on 9. It's funny because I didn't update my... I actually wanted to try 10, and I went to buy it, and I realized that I haven't updated my operating system in like 4 years because finally everything works.
Yeah,
so I'm scared to upgrade to Mountain Lion and then to Maverick, so I'm just staying on Lion for as long as I can, and then I guess I'll try 10 if I get a new computer and just start fresh. But right now I have everything perfect, and everything's organized. I just do not want to mess that up.
The only thing I would advise is that, everything you can do in 9, you can do in 10. But there's some lovely new MIDI effects that are really cool. And there's a new synth, this retro synth, which is kind of cool. What about outboard? Do you use any outboard, or are you strictly in the box in the laptop?
I'm pretty much all in the box. I'm all in the box.
You're on the box?
I wish I could move away from it a bit, but at the same time, it's like, from what I gather, people don't really get that much benefit from going with hardware. It's obviously nice, and it'll add like a certain richness to your sound, but it's like we're in the digital age. You might as well just stay digital.
I think the one thing that we've got the UAD stuff here, and we've got new plugins like UE Satin and stuff, and they're getting so every month everything's inching so
getting better
and better towards the analog world.
Where it's to the point where you have to have a really, really, really refined ear to tell the difference.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
That's the point. So you're sitting down at a blank Logic page.
Yep.
Where do you start? Is it bringing a loop? Do you start jamming chords? Do you have a riff? Do you bring in a track, somebody else's track, and you sort of make against that?
It's essentially just like my approach to chords and writing melodies. It's always different. I sometimes will start by, I'll be in the shower and I hum some melody and I freak out and have to run downstairs and just, plot it out. Or I'll sometimes just be going through samples. What's weird is when I first started out, it's really funny because I often credit the way that I learned how to produce to why I do things now, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I never had any mentor really. I had a high school teacher who had a pretty good knowledge of electronic music, and he would just give me some tips, but more or less I just got Logic and I just opened it and experimented.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with just writing dance music in general. I had no idea what I was doing because my friend just showed me a mix from Collar Cox randomly, and I was like, oh, this is cool music, I'll try it. So I would have 10-minute songs with the weirdest arrangements, and it didn't make any sense. And I would produce essentially from 0.0 until the end. I wouldn't make the chords and the drop and then do the intro. I would start with the intro, and then essentially make the track as if you're listening to it. It was the weirdest formula ever, but sometimes I still use that that kind of technique to write stuff. So I'll just make a beat that will be in the intro, and then it just develops into the rest of the track.
I produce the same way. I start at the start. I'm probably
it's really weird.
I'd make a chord structure, but then go back to start, and then I was saying to Brian tonight that I need the song to kind of dictate to me where it wants to go. So it's kind of so what about your arrangements? How do you approach those?
Arrangements, well, it's funny because I'd say a year or two after I started producing, I didn't even know what an arrangement was. I just was making stuff. I didn't care when it happened. I just, I would have 5 drops in a track and it didn't make sense. But then one day I had a friend that was like, you need to figure out how to do arrangements. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try that. And so I would just reference certain songs and kind of see where they were dropping out and coming back in and whatnot. And I kind of just found this structure of like, you know, a minute in, a minute and a half break, drop for a minute. And then now I'm actually following a completely different formula of like 30-second intro now, or 30-second intro, and then 30-second or 45 drops, and then a minute outro. I've shortened everything out.
I was going to say, because I mean, I'm an old school DJ. I was producing '98, and I used to make 12-minute tracks. These were
I wish I still could, but it's like
I miss those days, and I was looking through your playlist today, and I was going 6:34. I mean, this is one step away from radio edits, and how do you, when you're DJing, having 30-second intros, does that present any problems, or is it just quickly get it across? I've gotten
used to it. It used to really trip me out, because I kind of weirdly mix in like an old school way where I don't go very fast. I try to have really long transitions, and it's kind of a more, it's probably has to do with the fact that I saw Prids for my first show, so I've always mixed kind of similar to that. But with these 30-second ones, it's like you kind of just whip into the next track, and it's a bummer, but it'll work, like, because I mix almost all the time harmonically, so I'm not just like randomly picking a track and it'll just be like bah! And go to the next one. It'll usually make sense, but it'll just be a lot faster. And with these 30-second ones, I've kind of gotten into this style of, instead of mixing while the outro is going, I'll start mixing as the drop is finishing, and it'll seem as if the drop is finishing and it was about to go on the outro. It just goes to the next track, and because it's in a similar key or it just works harmonically, it'll just sound like the song's over and it's on the next. So it's kind of an easy formula for the 30-second intro stuff.
Let's just go quickly. I do want to go back to the sort of DJing and how you DJ. In fact, let's do it now. Are you a tractor DJ or CDJ with a pen drive?
Just CDJs.
Just CDJs. And how do you approach DJing?
Well, I mean, I think it was like 4 years ago. I was working at like some golf course or something, and I spent my entire summer's savings on CDJ 200s.
Okay.
So like the cheapest models, and some like low grade mixer. I think it was the 700 or 600 DJM. And so I just would burn CDs, and I just kind of figured it out. And then I remember I read online, it was like, I think Steve Angelo did some forum post where he was talking about the whole plus 0.8 plus 1.6 type percentage mathematic thing, where it's like a BPM is essentially an increment of 8 on the percentage scale. And so I started using that as like a rule of thumb, and I still do actually. So I kind of learned randomly.
Okay. And when you're playing in clubs, does that formulate what you do in the studio? Do you test roads, test drive tracks, and sort of, and what you see happening in clubs, does that translate back into the studio?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, for me, I just get a lot of, I pretty much just get fired up after I play a show, just because, you know, you see a bunch of music do well and you want to go back in the studio and try different things. So like right now I've been home for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks because I've just wanted to get a ton of these tracks done. But part of me kind of misses playing for that feeling of coming back home and being like really fired up to make music, instead of just being like, I made a song this week, I got to do another one. And it's like, I don't know, it gets redundant if you don't have stuff to kind of mix it up and refresh you. So I think gigging really helps.
Do you find it difficult to juggle the whole on the road weekends and finding time in the studio? Do you produce on the road? Are you one of these guys that can work on a laptop and a set of headphones?
Yeah, I used to be kind of. I wasn't as good as it in the past, but I've figured it out kind of how to get myself in my element when I want to work, and I've just gotten to the point where I know that I need to be working all the time, so I just suck it up and do it anyway. Cool.
Let's talk a little bit about the Mara Levy collaboration. How did it come about? How do you sort of, for young aspiring producers out there that maybe have one track out, how do you then reach out to these sort of bigger name stars, so to speak?
Well, the Mara Levy collab, it was funny because I think he just like randomly followed me on Twitter one day because he played one of my songs.
Okay.
And I just like hit him up and I was like, oh, what's up, man? I love your stuff. Like, I've listened to it for a while. And we just started talking on Twitter, and then we got Skype contacts, and then we started talking on that. And then one day it was like we both had like the entire day free, and we were just talking about stuff for some reason. And we both kind of just went like, why don't we just work on something? And this was actually my favorite collab I've ever done, because he was still living in Israel at the time, and I was in Brooklyn. And he had like some acapella from a track, and he chopped out a word, and he was like, "Why don't we try to like reprocess this?" So we both individually tried to like repitch it, and he ended up getting the one that went into the song. So he like I did one that wasn't that great. He did one that was all right, and I went back and tried another one, and then he did it, and it really was really good. And it was funny because he sent me the little acapella of the "I know what I want to be," and I like literally wrote the lead and the chords in a minute because it just like came out. And that's why it was the coolest collab, because we both work really really fast.
Okay.
And that's another thing that has to do with my weird production technique is like my songs that have released are the only ones that I finish in like a day.
Right.
If it takes more than like a day or two, it's not really going to be a track that releases probably. It's really weird. But back to this Mauro Levy thing. So it was essentially a full day of sending files back and forth. So I would send like leads and chords, and then he would send the bass line and maybe another different lead on top. And then I would send him the MIDI, the chords, and he'd send a better synth that worked. So I don't know, it was really cool because it was like the most mutual collab that I've ever done.
And is it all WAV files that you're sending back and forth? Is it? Because I know
depends. I mean, it was mostly WAV files, and then like for example, I wrote chords and my pad was not very good, and I was like, "Do you have any other pads that will work well?" And I just sent the MIDI over, and he was like, "Yeah, this is great," and it worked out. And what was cool is like, I don't know, I'm pretty controlling with my production, so most of the time when I'm collabing, I take a lot of the initiative and I try to do as much as I can because I just get very weird about things being different and not typical for me, so I try to take a leading role. But this was the only collab I've ever done where it was like actually mutual, and it was really cool.
Are you a bit of a control freak? Is it
Not
hard? Is it hard to do collabs?
I'm like really organized, and I'm really set in my ways when I produce. So like if I'm working with someone, I'm usually the one sitting and like doing all of the little technical stuff, and then we'll sit, the other person will write in chords or whatever, or come in and change a few things. But I'm usually kind of taking the reins.
Cool. Remix duties. You've had some big remixers or people asking for your sound, knocking at the door, like Usher, Killers, Data Life. Do you enjoy the remix process?
Yeah, I love remixes. I can do them in a day. So, like, I think my last 3 remixes I've had to do in a day or two. So I can just do it really quickly and it works.
What? I mean, I can't fathom doing a track in a day. How can you do a track in a day? What's the key?
Well, I guess it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of like the best analogy.
Do you have templates or anything?
No, I don't use templates. I have a very, very organized way of how I make all my music, and it's essentially I can make a template and make my life easier, but I don't like it because I like the process of redoing things because it'll bring out something else maybe, or I'll find something else that I messed up last time or did differently last time. But like, for example, the Martin Solveig one I did, they sent me the vocal for that, the label, and they were like, we need this in a day or two, and I was like, okay. And so I just sat down and I was trying to write chords for a while, and I was getting kind of frustrated, and then I kind of just moved to like an arpeggio, a little small thing, and it ended up being one of the main elements in the track, and that brought out a better chord progression. And then the thing is once I hit like a little stride, I end up finishing the track. So that's why I work every day, and I wake up at 8 every day, and I will do something, and maybe it'll be new or maybe it'll be working on something else, but I'm just waiting for this little tick where it becomes something good, and then the rest of the track just comes from there. And that's why that's like most of my tracks come in a day. So
cool. So what's Pierce's go-to synth? Do you have one synth that is on everything, or do you have a sort of arsenal of synths?
I have a little arsenal. I mean, I can look at this project I have right now. Well, I use mostly like Silent and Nexus for very like standard sounds. Okay. I don't really use it for my like really characteristic stuff. So I'll use Silent for like some bass layers and Nexus for some lead layers or some chords, or maybe little plucky things. But like right now I have some Contact stuff for like more natural sounds. I've been using Surge a lot. Who's it by? Vember Audio, I think. And that's really good for just like very fundamental sounding synthesizer noises, not so much like super saws and all that. Like I have Surge working this sound right now, which I love, and I've used it a few times in songs, but like it's very good for like fast and very, very synthy sound.
Sort of sequence elements. Yeah.
And another one I use a lot is called Synth Master by KV331 Audio. And that's just kind of nice because it's almost like Silent in terms of its sound, but they have a lot more options for synthesis. Like they have, let me go back to it. I actually love this one because it's like I was saying, it's kind of like the sounds of Silence, but a lot more unique because you can change the type of synth or the oscillator that you're using, and it's like you can do additive or wave scan or vector or just basic where you have like saws and all sorts. And they also have like a crazy bank of waveforms, so they have like stuff that they've taken from like, where's this list? They'll have Moog sampled waveforms essentially.
Okay,
so.
yeah.
Stuff like that, and Rhodes and Roland and all these other kind of old school Buchla.
What about like ES2s, ES1s? Do you use any Logic stuff?
I mean, I used to, but I use, actually, weirdly enough, I use a lot of the Logic stock effects plugins. Like,
yeah.
I live by them. And like, for example, people are always freaking out about reverb. I've used the same like old Logic reverb for everything. Just because I love it and it works, and it kind of adds this characteristic in my music because it's always the same kind of reverb.
I've got this sort of big reverb chain that has the tape delay going into a platinum reverb and then a compressor, and it's my sound on my tracks, you know. So it's kind of cool. It is something that I suffer from using Logic, was that because the internal stuff is so good, you never really had to look elsewhere for stuff.
Nope.
What's your main reverbs? Do you use just platinum, or do you use like Valhalla or?
Yeah, I mean, I use platinum reverb. That's like my main go-to. But I also have I use some of weirdly I use Space Designer for like this one plate. I have this really good little drum plate that I use on every one. Like if I have a loop that sounds like it's being chopped up, I throw this drum plate on it and it sounds like it's a normal loop again. It's really nice.
Cool.
So that's more of like a tool versus just actual reverb. But I have Valhalla. I don't use that so much for my dance music stuff. I'll use it for my more experimental stuff. So yeah, really for all dance music, I use Platinum just because it's very standard. It's not going to take up a ton of the space in the track, but it's going to sound good.
Okay. Any other secret plugins that you've got going that you would like to sort of, you know, do you use Satin, or is there something that you go, you know, I found this little tiny $30 plugin and it's just the business?
Yeah. Well, I have a few little secrets, like, you know, Xfer, the Steve Vita company. He did this plugin. Someone was telling me he made it for La Castlevania because he wanted this multi-band compression preset from Ableton called OTT. So he made a plugin called OTT for Logic. Yeah. And it's essentially a multi-band compressor that's set for the preset of OTT on the Ableton multiband. Yeah. And it's just this, I don't know, it's a really nice way of like, you can throw it on a bass line and it'll just kind of, it's not even that much of a change, but you can kind of pull out the highs and lows and not really the mids, and it kind of, I don't know, it like makes things crispy and kind of sticks through a little bit more. Okay. And it's very subtle, but it works really well. And the plugin itself is really simple because it's 4 knobs. It's like a depth, which is like dry wet. They have a time, which is the amount. It's, you know, it's essentially the attack and release, and it's all simplified, and then an in and out. And I just love it because I'll throw it even on like I don't know if you've heard my Data Life remix, but the little glitchy sound thing that's the kind of main pluck during the drop. It's really out there because of this OTT, and I kind of just pulled it with a lot of multiband, and it just, I don't know, it's a really weird thing, multiband compression. You can't really name what it's doing. I always say it kind of makes the sound swallow a little bit, you know, into the track, and I guess it just makes it sound different, and that's always good. So.
And what, lastly, would be over your master chain? Do you have any specific plugins that do you have a master chain every time, or do you have some, do you change it for each song?
What's funny is sometimes I'll start mastering from scratch, and then I will just save the chain and go with it. So like I have one from this master of a recent song that I did that was good. I have a master from my Martin Solveig remix. I have a master from an old remix I did with my friend. So I have like different chains for different tracks, and it'll kind of play into the style track that's going on. Okay. So like my Martin Solveig master chain will work better with a progressive track, and the, you know, like I have my Steve Aoki one, which is an electro track. So
and what's on them? Is it waves on those L3s, or what's on them?
I do like a bit of Ozone, a bit of L3, SSL compressor. That was an old one, and then like let me see my current ones. It's mostly just waves and ozone. But I've actually, I don't know, I've changed my process a lot. Like I've even used sausage fattener as a limiter, and I mean it's not technically good, but
No, but it's whatever works and whatever is making the thing happen.
yeah, it's kind of a little cheating secret thing. But if you just put it on and don't change any of the settings, it's just one of the best limiters actually that I have.
Cool. Pierce, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. It was a great insight to your production and into your world. Thank you very much for giving all the tips and tricks that you've got going. Anything else you want to add for the young up-and-coming producers out there?
Just try different things. That's what I was always done, and it really does make a difference.
Pierce, thank you very much for joining us in Sonic Academy, and we'll see you all very, very soon, guys. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.